Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, August 26, 2025. It is 3:30 p.m. and this is a special meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I am president of the board and calling the meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. Let's do a roll call of commissioners. I'm Jeff Randall, Commissioner for District 1 and President of the Board.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
All right, we have one item on the agenda. It's the draft 2026 budget presentation. And do we have anything else that we need to add, or can we get a motion to approve? Okay.
Motion so moved.
Second.
Ken motion, Dan seconded. All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. All right. Joe, welcome to week 4.
Way through week 4. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Randall. Commissioners, pleased to be here for my first Jefferson PUD budget process, and we're in the beginning phases of that. So Mike Bailey, our finance director, has prepared a slide deck to introduce our 2026 draft budget. Being in between my third and fourth week, preparation for this budget was well underway before my arrival. Our team will propose a strategy refresh later this year that will influence operating and capital budget prioritization and approach. There are existing capital plans that I've not fully reviewed or embraced. There are some projects that I continue to learn about and am not prepared to dive into without further review. Those caveats aside, I believe this budget will position Jefferson PUD well to meet our objectives in 2026, assuring our water quality and asset investments, enhancing our electric reliability, and building our broadband infrastructure will continue under this budget plan. I'll turn it over to Mike, and we'll look forward to hearing commissioner and stakeholder feedback as we go through the presentation.
And is it okay, Joe and Mike, and normally what we do, this is for Joe's benefit, is commissioners always have first cut as we're going through things. And what we like to do is if we see something and it's a clarifying question, we like to ask it at the time, if that's okay. Okay.
Yes.
And then normally what we do is then once we're through the whole budget, we then might have some discussion. If there's public members, we might, then take public questions or comment, but that's normally how we like to, at least how I like to run the meeting. So just giving you a heads up. All right, please take it away, Mike.
So this is our first look at the 2026 budget. This is just a draft budget with the change. Just some things to keep in mind. We did have a change in management leads to a change in the 2026 budget philosophy, as Joe kind of mentioned just a little bit ago. There are some things that we left in the budget as based on our work plans and just our expenses based on what we've done in the past. But with Joe and his new management style and leadership, some of that's going to change as we go through. We also have FCS group that's in the process of reviewing rates and conducting a rate study. We've did the electric ones already. We haven't really included any rates for the increase in 26 because with Joe, we're trying to even things out before we go through. So if we don't have to do it, we're not relying on the budget in it. And they'll do the water ones, which we have not incorporated in anywhere because we don't know what they are. The budget's a guide to the financial path that will allow the PD to operate day to day as well as complete our capital projects. And we use the balanced budget, just meaning that our revenues are equal to or greater than our expenses.
So Mike, before you leave that page, when you say FCS group is in the process of reviewing rates, so like you said, we had the electric one that we literally just did. When you say are they working on water? Could you be more specific?
Water and sewer.
Water
the next ones are they going to be working on? Probably within the next couple of months, they'll get started on that one. They're wrapping up the electric ones, which is more the opt-out rates. We still a couple tiny ones that we left outstanding, and then they'll get working on the water and sewer.
Okay, I have one more question. And then where do we stand on the tri-area sewer rates? Is that built into the interlocal agreement, or what's the plan with those?
for the Port Hadlock sewer.
Yep.
That's all county based.
Okay.
With just a billing. That's just mainly passing through.
So the county commissioners officially set those rates. We collect them.
And then
Any makeup in budget that we're seeing, the budget is kind of a different relationship of us and the county, and we
Sure.
collect the money, pass it on, and then
Yep.
if there's any,
yeah, we collect any revenues based off for the Hadlock sewer project and pass those on to the county.
okay,
We will bill them for running, any FTEs that we have to run the system.
Okay.
And then also for billing purposes, we'll bill them a little bit each month
okay,
for that.
all right,
So since Commissioner Randall brought it up on the water rates in particular, I know that this 2026 budget appears to be under the premise that we're going to go with the current rate structure. Normally, we make the increases during the winter time. Staff have an idea about timeline of when we would institute new water rates, because we'd be going almost a year and a half before a rate increase would probably kick in like we normally would, or at least a year. So I'm a little concerned about the revenue side for water, if that's the plan.
At this time, I don't have a timeline or a plan as to when we would be able, because a lot of it's going to depend on how long it takes FCS to do the background work and then present stuff to the board to be able to prove it.
Yeah.
You are correct. Normally we do our rate increases January for water, but we're not going to be ready for January of 2026.
I'm just concerned about the impacts, to capital improvements on that side, and, staffing levels that we'll be able to maintain during that time.
well, and sorry to get you bogged down on the first slide,
Yeah.
but I mean, these are relevant questions. Are we able, what if we said, we know costs have gone up, at least, I'm just going to pick a random number, 3% or 3.5%. Therefore, we believe a 3 to 3.5% increase to the water rates is necessary. Could we do that without a rate study? And again, if you need to do further analysis and get back to us, that's a fine answer too. But just a thought, as Dan said, if we said, hey, we're looking at the budget, it's short, we know costs have gone up, we're going to do some sort of rate increase just as a placeholder until we get the rate study done and implement it, for example, this winter. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, we could. I mean, I can set the revenues kind of wherever we want them, what we think they might go to. And it is, potentially possible to say, that we could do a 3%, 3.5%. That's what we raise the expenses by, just to kind of match it. It was what CPI was when I started putting the budget together. So it is possible, something we haven't really discussed or talked about doing.
Okay.
But it is something that we could potentially
One
do.
quick follow-up on that is, I don't know if we would need to have a rate hearing and Joel would
Right.
probably have to weigh in on that, going that route.
And is Joel with us today or no? Okay.
No.
Well, and those are good questions. Could we do it? If we wanted to do it, what would be the process? And I think, Dan, I suspect you're right. Some sort of formal meeting dedicated to that issue with probably some sort of proposal out there that people could react to, showing what the budget implications would be. And then the third question is, and do we have to have a rate study to do that, or rate studies are necessary for blank, just having us understand when and how you have to do rate studies and what you can do without rate studies. And some of that may be a Joel question and whatever, but.
Just offering an opinion.
So when will the rate study by FCS for water be completed?
Don't know that right offhand, Ken, because they haven't even started. I'm assuming they're going to start in probably a couple of months. It could take them a couple of months or so to get done. Then it will come to the board and have meetings and discussions about. That could take all of 26, depending on how it goes with the board and everything. So
I'm guessing the soonest would be like mid-spring or something. But what were you going to say, Joe?
I was just going to say that as with electric, there's a two-step process, right? We understand what the revenue requirement is, and then we allocate, making sure that cost of service is being maintained amongst the rate classes. That second step could potentially be handled later. The more straightforward one is understanding how to close the gap on revenue requirement. Then we could come back and make adjustments within classes once the study's done, if that please the commissioners.
Yeah, and just to respond to what Dan was saying, that jumped out at me too, though. There was kind of that hole in the water side. Okay, we delayed things. Are you okay moving on, Ken?
Yes,
Please continue.
Make sure the microphone came on. We're switching microphones around.
Okay.
So just going into some budget foundations. The revenues for electric and water, they're based on a 5-year average in the current rates. Revenues for broadband are based on estimated connections that we're going to be doing over the rest of this year and into next year. The big one that we do have to have some input on from the board, and whether we want to do it now or do it at the end of at the end of the presentation. And it's the one that we do every year. It's the tax revenues. Currently, we have 80% going to broadband and 20% going to water. I'm in the budget. I budgeted it for 700,000, which is
I'm sorry, how much? What was that number again?
700,000.
Okay, thank you.
Which that is just more of an estimate. We don't. We also have the 1% increase that we can cap or take, whichever one the board wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Normally we cap the 1% increase and just keep it the normal plus the new construction, keep it at the same levels plus new construction.
Mhm.
So I always have to budget a little bit higher than what we think it's going to be so we can ensure we get everything.
Staff have a timeline or preference for when we make that decision? Because I think it's probably I would expect we'll do what we've done in the past. So is that something you guys need to know sooner rather than later?
I mean, it will affect the budget a little bit as you'll see as we go through. We've done it usually right about the budget time as part of our budget hearing on the first Monday of October to pass what we want to do with that. So it's just some discussion so staff knows how to move forward with presenting the resolution come the budget hearing.
Mm-hmm. And so I think, I don't expect doing anything differently, just to respond to your question. And then I'm assuming we'll get to broadband. We'll be able to talk about the broadband budget and, the growth in revenues and so forth. I guess I'm kind of wondering, how are we using the rough? So 20% of that would be around 140,000. What are we using 140,000 for in the budget? Is it possible to kind of sort of identify it a little bit?
There'll be a line item, I believe, when we get to that slide.
Okay,
If that works for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we can talk about it once
Sure.
we get down there a little bit
Yeah.
longer to the water budget.
Yeah. And then I guess the other one that jumped out at me, you had budgeted 12, I know you're not to that line yet, 12 vacant or new positions. And I was kind of curious if we're going to talk about what we think those are too.
We'll get to that point, but yeah,
All right.
I think we can talk a little bit about those because some of those are placeholders.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, we increased our expenses by 3.5% based on the CPI. Back when I started this, over the last 12 months, the CPI's increased about 3.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Then yes, we budgeted for 12 vacant or new positions. These include a couple of more wastewater treatment, 3 operators for the Hadlock sewer to help
Mm-hmm.
with the Hadlock sewer system. We got some engineering, 3 different engineers for help with some engineering, and then just some other miscellaneous positions. I'm drawing.
When you
a
say
blank on.
engineers, what kinds of engineers? Because we have water engineers, we have electrical engineers.
So an electrical engineer, a civil engineer, and a fiber engineer
Wow. Okay.
for all 3 utilities.
So one quick point of clarification too, on the 3 water operators at Lux Sewer. I know we had the ILA for 1. I remember maybe it was 1.5. I can't remember the numbers, but we were going to split that cost. Is that still the plan? Is to split the cost with, I think it was evenly. I don't remember.
Yeah, so it is 50% cost, and the first 2, I know there isn't an issue. I've talked to Samantha Harper with the county as we were billing, and she's good with us doing the 2. Haven't discussed the 3rd one yet with her to know whether we may have to go back and adjust the ILA to get that 3rd one covered. But yes, it is a 50% share cost of them.
So we've got 2 FTEs that are planned to be hired or either are hired, budgeted to be hired, whatever the term is, for the Hadlock sewer, and half of the cost of those FTEs are being covered by the county and half are being covered by us. And we're thinking that we're going to be using one of those FTEs for other stuff.
Yeah, so might invite Jose to respond about this, but the current ILA says that we'll hire 1 Group 3 wastewater treatment operator, and the county will reimburse us for 50% of the one Group 3 wastewater treatment operator. So it is unclear about hiring another one, what that reimbursement rate is.
Okay.
It isn't obvious to me that the PUD would be needing another half, needing to would get benefit from and need to fund the other half. So we need to work those details out with the county.
Okay. And that agreement, I don't know if you've had either Mike or Joe, if you've had a chance to look at this yet. If to me, this is kind of a big deal. It's like this system is going to take a lot more staff than we thought to run.
So originally, when it was prepared, it was based loosely on Port Gamble. And there's some subtle differences as we're filling out the operating permit for it,
Mm-hmm.
that there is a need for, in fact, 2 positions and not the single or the 1.5.
Right. Yeah. So I guess from my perspective, the concern I have is that the other PUD customers shouldn't be paying for staff at the tri-area sewer plant that doesn't some way benefit the other PUD customers.
Because we thought the one we would utilize that first, but now we're going to 2 or 3 employees. That's an added cost that we would end
Yeah.
up paying. Even if the equation stayed the same with them covering 50%, that still could equal 1 more FTE that we really don't need.
Yeah, unless we're able to use them. And I think, again, Dan's
And on a
right.
tight water budget, this is this type of stuff that will add up in the aggregate to matter.
Significantly, yeah. And we've had these outs. I don't even know where we ended up with that Cape George or Beckett Point. It was Beckett Point, the sewer management of that. I mean, so we have multiple issues, and this is one I definitely think we would not want to be shouldering costs of that tri-area sewer.
And it's important for the determination of the rate structure with FCS when they look at this too. So I think we need to know that sooner rather than later.
So
To clarify, Jose, is that a legal requirement that we staff it with 2 or more people?
I would say yes. Because of the operating permit, and as we are filling it out, it's going to require 2 people.
And based on
Okay.
how the system was designed and
Based on
operations.
design, correct.
Yeah.
You have to have a backup at a minimum. So a 50% FTE is going to have to be certified to do that job.
And my understanding was that was related to that surface water pond that they have as opposed to injecting it in a well that Port Gamble does.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think staff is clear that we have negotiated to a certain point with a certain set of assumptions. And if the assumptions are changing because of external licensing requirements, we'll be back with the county, understanding what the impact of that is, but not expecting the PUD to be onboarding any additional costs due to licensing or a facility that is not ours. It's we're operating that as a service,
Right.
not expecting to absorb costs associated with it.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, please continue. There's so much content in here. This is like all meat.
Yeah,
So we have lots of good questions.
This is great because this is helping us it's helping Joe, it's helping me, and just helping the whole PUD as we move through to understand where priorities and stuff lie for the board as well.
Mhm.
So capital projects are based on our work plans, the needs, and then predetermined work areas related to the grants. Again, we're going to put an emphasis on improving our safety and creating a culture around safety in 26. Some additional foundations here we're including in the electrical distribution maintenance expenses, $1 million for tree trimming. And the plan is we're going to come up with a plan to actually spend the whole $1 million. Then per RCW 54.16.100 and a compensation study that's in progress, we've included $200,000 for raises in the administrative and general expenses. And then our principal and interest payments are based on our amortization schedules.
Okay.
So now that we've given the background, let's get into some numbers.
Hang on, Mike, if you could. This is a little bit different than what I'm used to seeing us do this. I thought you'd pull up the 26 budget foundation with all the bullets because I had some questions about each individual, well, not all of them, but some of the individual bullets, and there's 24 of them. I don't know how to equate into, as you're going through the slides or the graphs, where I should ask those questions, so.
So because last year I switched to a PowerPoint presentation, I did not include all the foundations even last year. If there is a specific question on the foundation,
Would
we
you
can
rather
look-
take it now?
I'd say hit it now.
we can
Yeah.
look at it. I just have to.
Yeah,
have the
I'll,
budget pulled up.
yeah, and I've got several on here, but I'll start with the ones that, some of them we've already touched on a little bit. But one of them I'll go to is the training budgets are relative to the
Could you
same.
identify what number that is, Dan?
It's
as you're going through them?
14.
Okay, thank you.
Training budgets are relative to the same levels as 2025. Could you clarify on that? Because as we get more employees or employees are expanding their abilities, we're going to, I would think the training budget will expand or
It
increase.
had, so.
So could you
relative-
define what that means?
So relative mean to the same levels is we have kind of, I base it off of what we did in 25, but there are, based on a few departments as we are transitioning and adding new employees, I did bump it up in a few areas. So that's, they're based off of kind of what we did in 25, but they did increase slightly in 26.
So I'm not sure where those numbers will be shown out, proven out in the budgets per department or whatever. So again, we don't have the granularity with what we have to know how that would be implicated is the way I see it. Now, maybe I'm seeing it
I thought there
wrong.
was a line where there was training was identified later
So
on.
I have training itself. I have not actually ever called out specifically when it, in the budgets by department. It talks about labor and benefits. It talks about the fleet cost, the contracting, the outside services, the consultants, and things like that. But we have not called out training specifically by department or as a PUD as a whole. The actual dollar amount that we spend on that.
So I guess moving forward in future budgets, this is something for me that it's hard to wrap my head around what that number is and where it shows up in the budget. Because to me, that is one of the more important things is the training we're offering and supplying. That's a critical component of a functioning, a good functioning organization. So
we can bring that back as we go, because this is just the first touch of the 2026 draft budget. If there is more information that the board is requesting or wanting and Joe's comfortable with it, then we can show some of that information out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable request to know how much we're spending on training.
So I guess I'm looking at the slide you sent out, Mike. It's got the budget total safety expenses by type. So you did have one slide on it, which showed
safety is training is a component of that, but
yeah, that's only a portion of the training because not all of it's safety
it
related.
had $1 million.
That's
Okay.
that's just for safety.
All right.
related
I'm getting the
purposes.
two mixed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if the other commissioners have any questions or not. I had a couple more.
Go ahead.
here. Some we've already discussed, like the breakdown of the property taxes and what we're doing with that. What else was there? Expenses for that, more employees, training. So I'll jump up to broadband revenues. Number 4 are based on projected connections. Again, I know this is a nebulous thing. We've had trouble nailing down those numbers along the way. I'm kind of curious for broadband revenues, the projected connections that I'm okay with projecting, but I'm not sure on connections how the revenue is equated to that because different connections are going to be at a different value. If someone, is taking a smaller package and we don't have to run 1,000 or 1,500 feet to hook them up, there's a difference in the cost of connection and what the return to the utility would be. So how are we basing the revenue on projected connections?
It's operating revenues. What you're talking about, some of what you're talking about there is the capital costs of running the fiber to the home or anything like that, expanding the fiber. That's a capital cost based. That what we're looking at here is our operating revenues and what that monthly package is it's costing and
I'm wondering
what they're going to take.
I'm wondering if it'd be better to wait until we got to that broadband.
Yeah.
Cover a whole thing.
Yeah, that was just one of the topics
Okay.
was, and again, I know expenses matter too, right? That's my point is,
Yeah.
how's that all going to balance? But when we say projected on connections, I don't know what price per connection we're utilizing, whether we're blending to get one number or whether we're assuming there's 1,000 customers at one rate and 2,000 at another rate. I kind of want an idea of how we're basing the projection for that
Yeah,
revenue.
we can get into that as we get through there.
Or whether you're blending it all into just one, $75 across the board. So,
Any more questions on those 24 initial bullet points?
no, I
Dan?
think that'll
Okay.
suffice for now.
Okay, let's continue, Mike.
Okay.
And Ken, did you have anything on those bullet points? Are you okay?
No, I'm good to move forward.
Thank you.
So looking at the utility budgets, so what we're budgeting is we're budgeting about 51 million in operating revenues for the electric, about $4.5 million in water, and then $2 million, which is kind of a blended.
Sorry.
It's based on our on residential packages, the commercial packages, wholesale packages, and other services provided on a normal operating basis to make the $2 million, and which gives us a combined of $58 million in total revenues for the utility. The total cost of service is $44 million for electric, $5 million for water, $3 million for broadband, so a total of $52 million.
So Mike, before you move along on that first one, on the operating revenues, and maybe you said it and I missed it because I was thinking about something else as you were talking there. Did you say we were going to base this on the 9% increase? Did I miss that? Or how are we basing the operating revenues? What's the calculation, or the equation that we're using to determine operating revenues for the electric in
So
particular?
That's the 5-year. I used a 5-year average based on our current rates that we're charging.
And the
The
current
9%
rates,
that you're kind of talking about is the BPA increase, the average
Yeah.
of that.
well, we did that one in June though, the
Yeah.
9.75 didn't
Yeah,
show,
that
coincides.
was, yeah, based on the current rates.
which
of-
includes the 9.75.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to clarify why that was done, we're not getting in front of the commissioner's decision to do future rate increases. So we're just using commissioner authorized rate increases for retail revenue and then factoring in Bonneville's wholesale rate projection.
And then again, since we're talking about the 2026 budget, partway through 2026, we talked about an additional, what it was like 4% increase or whatever that number. Now I can't remember what it was. Is it more than that? Was it 6? Yeah. 6%. So I think that's what you're referring
And
to
that's
as,
for that. We did not go ahead and include that in the 26 budget.
got it.
6.9, it's closer to 7.
So we'll be revisiting,
Because
Joe's proposal is to revisit the need for that and at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and as Mike is moving on to expenses, I think about capital costs too, is, that rate increase that we had, we could end up having to revenue finance some of our capital. And so the revenues that we get needs to be pretty tight, I think, to determine what may have to go towards capital work if we can't get the money we need, through loans and stuff. So
Yeah. And
that's where my mind takes me. I know it's kind of out of context and out of line here as far as the timing, but that's why I'm asking some of these questions.
And I have the same question because when we get down to unrestricted cash, it's like, wow, looks great, 17 million or whatever. But then there's that question of how much of that capital facilities plan are we going to need to pay ourselves or borrow
Revenue
money
finance.
and then have new financing that we're paying for. So I guess we're going to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so all the revenues are based on all the operating revenues are based on current published rates that we have on our website
Okay.
as of today.
Okay. And then were you going to go through water and broadband or are you going to move off this slide?
No, I was just going to go line by line here.
Okay.
So the total cost of service is around $44 million. This is operating costs. This is only expenses. This doesn't include any capital stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's $44 million in the electric, $5 million in water, $3 million for broadband. So a total of $52.5 million for the whole utility. The operating margins is $7 million for electric. Water and broadband are both losing money from an operating standpoint. $700,000 for water and just under $1 million for broadband, which brings us to only $5.5 million for total operating margins for the utility.
So Mike, which of those numbers or columns most affects that tier number? Just out of
Only electric.
okay. So in the electric,
the tier and debt service coverage right now are the 4.65 and 2.91 are just based off our electric. As we report at year end, broadband will be added back into that numbers because we report electric and broadband as one utility at
Right.
the end of the year.
That-
But
and
on a
that's-
monthly basis, we separate it out.
And that's part of the reason I asked the question is because I know the tier is based on the electric, but broadband is tied to the wagon with electric. So I'm not sure how we calculate all that.
Yeah, so
What that does to the tier and the margins.
So yeah, so at the end of the year, those two would be added together. So you would be like not just looking at the math, the operating margins, you're looking around $6 million at the end of the year based on the budget here. When you add the non-operating margins, which is our taxes, aid to construction, and the timber taxes that we get from the state and through the county, which is $2 million for electric, 300,000 for water, and just under 700,000 for broadband, gives us the 3.1 million.
And since you mentioned, another quick question, does the county have an estimate for what the timber revenue will be? Because I know there's a lot of stuff going on in our county and adjacent counties that are affecting that timber revenue.
I have not seen anything, no.
Okay.
And that's, and usually they don't get it until later in the year.
I expect it to be a negative impact, not a positive impact. So,
Yeah, I don't know. So, looking at our total margins, it's 9.3 million for electric. Water is losing 400,000 for the year, and broadband's losing 291,000 for the year. So total margins is $8.6 million. So as you look, we'd be around 9 million when we combine the two. And so that tier and the debt service coverage would be based on that around 9 million. So it's not going to have too big as of right now, as long as everything goes according to budget, it won't have a significant impact to our tier or our debt service coverage.
Broadband business being included in the electric won't have a significant.
Should not have a significant
Okay.
impact on the two.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? Okay. Please keep going.
So now looking at the cash flow budgets, we're taking our total margins at the up at the top, and our construction projects. We have $11.2 million in construction projects for electric, 3.8 million for water, and the $15 million for broadband. So we got $30 million in capital. This is construction projects, not just capital purchases.
quick question: did staff send out two different sets of pages here? I'm looking to. I can't follow you with
So that's in the bottom
at the
half
bottom
of that
half. Okay.
page 3.
page 3.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just having trouble here locating.
That's okay. I sort of figured it out. So the
There's
top,
been many variations, and the computers have been acting very strange on me.
it starts cash flow budget.
Cash flow
right there.
budget. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. And I'm not sure if did we send out the presentation to the board?
I thought this was the one that said updated, but maybe not. Maybe
Okay. I wasn't sure. We talked about it, but then we were having some technical issues with.
We're just looking at one that's not a PowerPoint.
Okay.
It's the numbers that were sent out that weren't put in.
Yeah, they should be harmonized. They were taken off of this.
No worries, as long as we can
Yeah.
figure out.
You
where
guys
we
got
need
the
to be, that's
packet,
all
not
I'm-
the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You guys got the actual packet, not the PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
So yeah, this should be the bottom of the first,
Nope, I'm
One
I'm on the right page now, literally. So
general plant purchases. We have $1.4 million for electric, 115,000 for water, and 500,000 for broadband, for a total of $2 million.
Could you talk about what the difference is between construction projects and general plant purchases? How that
So,
works?
Construction projects are our infrastructure for each utility. The general plant purchases are going to be for either warehouse improvements, fleet purchases, tools, for
Okay.
things that we have to need to go do those
Got it.
infrastructure projects.
Got it. Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
Then roughly we got 3.7 million in principal for electric, 600,000 for water, and 387,000 for broadband. So we have 4.8 million in principal payments for Next year, we add back in our depreciation expenses for each utility because it's a non-cash expense. We take it out of the bottom line, but we add it back in.
What is the principal long-term debt on the broadband, the 387,000?
That is for some of the business fiber or downtown business fiber.
Part of the Public Works Board, $2
Yeah.
million loan or whatever?
We actually go over some of the debt.
Okay, no worries. I
And then
was just curious.
later down in the
Okay.
slides. Then we still have some of our LUDs that are paying back on the water side. So we'll have some money come back in. And then we have some grant
And for people listening, that's the local utility
local
district.
utility districts improvements.
So when will some of those be paid off? I know Marrowstone Island doesn't have much longer to run, does it?
No, Maristone's actually, the board of let us go ahead and pay that debt off because we had the money for it. I think it was supposed to in either this year or next year anyways. Most of them are ending within the next 2 or 3 years, Ken. We have the LUD 17 that we just did, the Shine Plat one,
Yes, yes.
20 years to go.
Okay.
And then if we do any others, but right now we only have 4 that we're still doing.
Okay.
We included, based on some of the 4-year work plans, the RUS predictions that we did, a $10 million loan for the electric side of things. That's some of the things that Joe's wanting to revisit and relook at as we go through projects. We have $2.6 million in grants and loans for the water side, and then $15 million in the broadband on our broadband grants. So we have $28 million coming in that way if we go through with everything. So total expenditures, we actually are making a little bit of money the way everything's working out on the electric side, having to pay out a little bit more on the water and broadband sides. So then the bottom is just the net cash inflow or outflows. So electric side, we're putting 9.7 in the bank, and we're putting money out, 760,000 out for water and just over $1 million for broadband.
And
So a total of 7.8 million.
And could you remind us, Mike, the RUS loan, was that a $5 million loan? I'm trying to remember what that was.
The original one that we did for the Auto Street building for 191 Auto Street and the AMI was 5.4 million.
Okay. And then did we do another one recently?
No. So we have a $5 million rural energy savings program loan that we haven't drawn down on. That's a 0% loan.
That's the kind of
that's
like
the
a
customers, that's
sort
the-
of like a revolving
yeah.
loan fund. Yeah.
And then the 10 million we talked about doing for a 4-year construction
Okay.
loan through RUS. We have not gone all the way with that one yet.
We've started the paperwork,
We started the
but
paperwork.
we haven't accepted any money or signed any final
No,
contracts
we
with
actually
commitments.
finished the application for that one.
Okay.
We just started. We got our 4-year work plan approved by RUS. So if we choose to go with them, we can.
Okay.
We're still waiting on some environmentals to get everything finalized before we can start the application process. And then that's one of those things that Joe coming on board is wanting to review and
Right.
make sure that we are doing what's in the best interest of the PUD.
Got it. Okay.
So getting into the electric utility, just kind of comparing the two budgets from 25 to 26. You can kind of see we went from 48 million in revenues to 51 million, 2.7. The total operating expenses went from 43.8 million to 44.2 million, which is an increase of 438,000. Net margins, we increased by 2.2 just between the two there, and our non-operating margins are increased by 244,000 over the two budgets. Net margins increased by $2.5 million. And then that leads to our tier and our debt service coverage have both gone up just slightly over the two.
Okay.
And it might be on the next slide. So as far as the operating expenses, I know we got our cost to purchase power, that we have the transmission expense going down. Is that the BPA transmission? Is that our own transmission?
That's where our own transmission work because we've switched and most of our BPA is in our purchase power cost line and not in the transmission costs.
So the 17 million that I'm seeing on cost to purchase power includes the
Yes.
transmission
Yes.
from BPA in that along with the cost of purchase power. This number at 17 million seems low to me. for both of those things being blended together, especially with BPA rate increases coming of 9% on the power and 20% on the transmission. I'm just,
Well, it's going from 15 million last year to 17 million
well,
next year.
I can't remember. Did we get still some of the reserve distribution clause in 25? Okay, so.
No. And so that 9% and 20% is the average that for BPA customers. Ours was slightly a little bit lower than the 9%. So they call it 9%, 9 and 20%. Our transmission cost for BPA is
About $1.5 million normally,
150,000,
isn't it?
the actual transmission cost. Distribution is around $1 million on average. Or more, just depending on the time of year. It can go up to $2 million.
So if you were to break the $17,000 down between power cost and transmission for BPA,
You
is
mean
it one?
17 million?
17 million. Is that 1.7 million in transmission and then 16 million in power? I mean, what's the breakout there? Do we have an idea what we're basing that on?
You need that level of detail. I think we're gonna have to get back to.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get.
Okay,
I'm gonna
no
have to get
worries.
back.
I'm kind of curious as to where we're getting the number for sure. So
Yeah, we'll have to get back to detail.
that's one I think
And I imagine what you want is to avoid is a surprise.
we don't want to miss that number. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so my understanding of the breakdown is we worked with our Bonneville account exec on the forecasted contract that we're going to sign, and this is our best effort of what that is. But if you need to dive into those details, we can do that in another session.
Yeah, that's the simplest number I'm looking for is what we estimate the power cost and the transmission from BPA to be. Just that evens, what that split is.
And of course, that assumes how much energy we're using, what time of year are we using it, and if we use more, we also see more revenues. So those things kind of
Yeah, it's going to be
float
variable. I'm just curious,
together.
what we're going to go with as
Yeah.
a base, the basis.
Yeah,
and-
we'll have to bring that back to the board.
Okay.
Well, and this is our first touch, so that's,
Yep.
I'm not like I want it tomorrow. So
And I think that's just kind of part of the continuing education on BPA. Every once in a while we do a little touch on BPA and helping the commissioners understand what that relationship is and where those costs lie is useful because we'll be at meetings and they'll start saying, oh, transmission's going up this much. And then it's helpful to know, okay, what part of our total cost is, for example.
and this is as much about education for the public as well that is involved in this process, so they understand where we're coming from with these numbers as
Sure.
well. That BPA is generating some of our budget here.
Okay.
Bonneville has a number of product offerings. They have transmission products for especially investor-owned utilities and larger utilities like Seattle and Tacoma, who are buying a transmission-only product to wheel some of their generation.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have block, and then they have slice, and they have full requirements. Full requirements where they're blending those for customers. Are basically charging a postage stamp rate, no matter where you are on the federal system, for delivery, and then the
So when we hear statements like that at other meetings, we have to keep in mind that we're only exposed to so much of that because we're getting that full requirements package. Okay. Right. Want to continue, Mike?
Yeah, so getting into the water utility, kind of the same thing, showing the difference between the 25 budget and the 26 budget. Revenues, just we've had using the 5-year average, it kind of has brought the revenues down just slightly. About $450,000, just looking at the two.
You have somebody on the phone talking. Can we figure out what's going on there?
I think it's Ken's, because he's the only one that's unmuted right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then our operating expenses, we were able to bring them down a little bit as well too, which brings our not operating margins down a little bit, non-operating margins down just a tad bit too. So total net margins we lost another $186,000 on our water budget. Getting in, we called it the broadband division instead of the utility, as I have done it before. Just because it rolls up to the electric side. You can kind of see where our operating revenues, we went from just under $1 million in 25 to we're going to try to get just over a little over $2 million in operating revenues. So an increase of about $1 million. Our operating expenses have gone up by $800,000 between the two budgets. It had an increase in our increase in our net operating margins by 261,000. And the non-operating margins, there's a significant change, but it's how I accounted for the grant funds coming in. Last year, I included them in the non-operating margins. This year, I took them out of the non-operating margins because last year there was a little bit of confusion with the cash flow budget showing both of them
Okay.
in there. So just to make it read a little bit easier, I took them out of the non-operating margins.
So they're going to show up in the cash flow.
Yeah, they're in the
budget for
cash flow
broadband?
budget.
Okay.
That was on the first screen and stuff, just because they're guaranteed, but we don't know when they're coming in.
Okay. And I wonder if now would be a good time for kind of Dan's question. And I had a question on this too, on the operating revenues for broadband, how we generate those, what we're assuming, what we can know, what we have to estimate. And then I guess the other question I had in addition to Dan's was, what do we think kind of the cost of operating the broadband division will be once it's mature? And I suppose there's a question of, well, when's that going to be? I guess, kind of when will it sort of balance out? What do we think that amount might be?
You have,
You want me to take that one?
if you want to take that one.
Sure. Yeah, so we put in a spreadsheet updating how many estimated new customers we'll be bringing on each month based on the build out for the grant area and based on how quickly we're able to get people activated. We've had some delays in last month because our splicing has been way behind, so our numbers are pushed back. So we had a little bit more aggressive numbers a week ago, and I asked Mike to dial this back a little bit because we're bringing on people a little bit slower for the current project. That will pick back up again. So it's based on the number of registrations and the activation rate. And then we did set up different tiers for average income per type of customer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an average revenue per residential retail, per wholesale, per business, and per enterprise.
Okay.
So we set those up, and that's based on our current sales.
So did you adjust those numbers for the percentage of low income customers that we expect? And do we know what that percentage would be?
I can get that to you in the next meeting. I have that, but I don't recall offhand.
Just curious on the methodology. That's
Yeah, and then as far as expenses go, we're at full staff for the broadband project.
Okay.
We staffed up earlier than anticipated because we are using our network techs to do parts of the construction, which we get paid back for by the grant.
Okay.
So we expected to be at 2 to 3 techs, and we're at 5. We don't anticipate adding more techs until we move into doing our own underground drops burying cut to the customer, which we wouldn't be doing for a few years.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what I heard there. So the grant is covering the extra
So we get paid.
in completion, or are we subsidizing those employees?
We pay the employees, but the grant projects includes the installation cost, which covers part of their labor to do the in-home installation.
So it's kind of like we had a choice as a PUD. Did we hire contractors to install it, or can we utilize our own staff, and can we bill for our own staff? Am I getting that basically right?
Yeah,
So we staffed up and we've been able to bill the grant for a lot of our own staff costs because they're doing this work of putting in the
But
infrastructure.
there's no gap there that has to be covered by broadband. The grants are covering that extra cost, or
So
no?
the grants cover all of the installations in the grant areas. We also have the installations that are in what we call the adjacent areas, which you're aware of, which are just next to a grant area where we charge the customer $750 for the install. So that covers part of, but not all of the labor of the techs to do that installation.
And that's probably why we're short, whatever it is, $1 million or something like
No,
that.
we're short $1 million on the cash flow when I think it was, or the capital expense. We're putting out, we're building outside of grant areas as well as in grant areas.
So it's not just staff. There's some infrastructure that we're paying for too. Okay.
So, Will, what's your estimate as to when the broadband division will be self-sufficient?
Self-sufficient is an interesting term, or possibly
Self-sustaining?
a subjective.
Let's say break even.
Yeah, so we're expecting, so at $3 million in expenses, we should be at $3 million in revenue in 2027, and then going up to 4 million later that year or into 2028.
Okay.
So we anticipate that we're going to be better than break even in the next 2 years.
Okay. Good to know. Do you have any more questions on broadband at this time? Please continue.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
this might be an inappropriate time for me to throw in there that this is a significant amount of scaling in customers to meet these revenues.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had great performance by our customer service team and IT team in finding methods to hook up these customers and get them integrated and registered into our system. So
Mm-hmm.
Jen's team has been doing awesome, and they've been working collaboratively with IT. So we're in a startup mode in this space, and this is a tremendous amount of scaling. And very proud of our staff for being innovative in how to do that scaling efficiently in the coming year.
Yeah, and it's, going to the NOAANET meetings, it's obvious how worried these other utilities are about getting into the retail business. And it's fine to go out and say, hey, we can offer you high-speed broadband for $60 a month and click on this link and figure out if we can hook you up. But then I think of it almost as like the sausage making process. Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made, and they don't really care about how hard it is for us to get their information and get it into billing and get it to some meter guy and have him have the right equipment. They don't care. They just want it to work. And these other utilities are really going slow because they're trying to figure it out. And it seems like we're almost like trying to catch up to this amount of grant money and build out, get the rest of the organization caught up so we can deliver on what we've been telling people we're going to do. So I've been hearing this from Curtis. We've been talking about it at NOAANET, and I appreciate how hard this is for everybody and what a team effort it is. And it's like the electricity. You just want it to work. You want people to get hooked up quickly, and there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into that. We're getting that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Randall. The demand is there and the funding is there. It's just getting ourselves to the point and all the labor together so we can make it happen.
And working with folks like NISC who maybe have never done this before and everything else. So it's pretty cool stuff that we're doing. Okay, please continue.
So this is just looking at our electric expenses, the $44 million that we're going to have, kind of showing where, how they split out to everything. So you can see that our cost of purchase power is 39% of our expenses for 26 budgeted for 26. And then our depreciation and A&G costs are another 30%. So these are just kind of showing how our expenses are split out for the electric side of things.
Okay. Questions there, commissioners, or keep going?
I do have a question. What is being amortized under D&A?
So what is being, well, the way it's set up, it's labeled depreciation amortization. We do have amortization is the goodwill purchase for when the PSE purchase. There is a little bit that we're amortizing over that, but the FERC accounting guidelines call it depreciation and amortization expenses. But we do
Good
have
enough. Thank you.
So this is just looking at the water, same way how we split out that $5.2 million in expenses. A lot of it goes to our water crews, 46%, 28 and 18%. And then depreciation and amortization is another 21%. And then A&G is 19%, makes up most of it. Broadband, it's the $3 million. Most of it is for A&G expenses, just where everything falls through, because a lot of it's, as Will was mentioned earlier, is going on the capital side of things, not on the expense side of things right now. Looking at the $52 million, break it down a little bit more. You can see 25% goes to labor and benefits, 33% then is our power costs, and another 15% to depreciation, just kind of to show kind of where and how we spend all of our money. Now looking at the capital and debt principles, you can kind of see out of $36 million that we're going to pay in these, most of it is for the broadband work plan, with the electric work plan not a little bit behind them, but getting pretty close to them. And then just other places where those dollars are spent. So looking at our capital and debt principal costs, again, we have the electric work plan for 11.2 million, the water work plan 3.8, broadband work plan 15 million, fleets at 805,000. Now their capital items are 1.2 million, and our long-term debt is 4.8.
So I had a question on a slide that was back, and it's reflected in expense allocation by department sewer. And I don't know how you reflected this in your slides, Mike, but this is in the packet I got. So this is on page, it says it's page 3. It can't be page 3. I don't understand what I'm looking at, but anyway, expense allocation by department, and then it says sewer, and it's got $516,780 labor and benefits for sewer. And I don't know if that number is familiar
Yeah,
to you.
so that includes all FTEs. That does not include the 50% that the county would pay for a couple of them. So that is
all the expenses for all the sewer people.
Yes.
$500,000. Okay.
Yeah, and that would be for 4. We have 2 now already on staff, and then the 2 new ones that we were
Okay.
budgeting.
And it doesn't reflect how much is covered by the county
No,
versus how
it
much is
doesn't
covered by
reflect.
us. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So looking at the electric capital, the 11.2, this is kind of a generic overview of where we're looking at spending the money, doing some substation feeder work for 3.6 million, upgrades to our substations for 6 million, transformer installation and upgrades of 125,000, reclosers for 40,000, some pole replacements for 100,000, SCADA upgrades for 300,000, and then just some miscellaneous upgrades and installations for 980,000. Water.
Just pause on that one for a second. It's a little, just wanna,
Yeah, there's a lot of information, a lot of big dollars there.
okay. Substation upgrades, 6 million. Joe, are you able to talk about that at all? That's the big number in that pack, what that covers.
Well, the 4-year plan covers, for example, a mill, a new substation near the mill. I believe there's substation transformer upgrades as well. So that is, I think, the bulk between those two.
Okay, acquisition of the land and substation improvements and
The land, that is true that the land is in there, but the land is not the substantial portion of that. That would be
Okay.
mostly the infrastructure. And again, this is carrying forward an existing 4-year plan that I would appreciate the opportunity to do some due diligence on. So it just to clarify what Mike was referring to. I mean, I need to own the 4-year plan. I don't think there's anything in there that's not appropriate. I just need to make sure that it's what we need now and
Right.
in alignment with what our strategy is going to be, which we're going to be sitting down and making sure we have alignment with the commissioner. So I just
okay.
need to have a little more time to process some of these before we actually issue this capital. But so perhaps some of this will get spent on feeder upgrades instead, or maybe we'll do some more pole replacements
Okay.
when we start doing more pole inspection. So it's going to potentially shift from categories, but it will still it'll be my objective to get feedback from you, the community, and make sure that we're optimizing our capital spend to meet our near-term needs.
Okay, so I'm guessing, I'll let you go in a second, Dan, but so I'm guessing as we go into September, October, November, and go from where we are now to a final budget for 2026, you're probably going to have a better, maybe not the final grasp on all those 4-year capital projects, but a better grasp, at least in terms of like what we're going to be spending in 2026. Is that a good assumption?
Yes,
Okay.
it'll, there's some additional work that we've got to do to build some muscle around that too. But yes, we'll have better clarity, but we frankly lack some tools that are more commonplace with our peer utilities that allow them to do internal assessments of where there are deficiencies and where they need to reinforce. And um, some of that is going to take some, frankly, expense, software expense to build that capability, but it will benefit us in the long run, both for how we operate the system when it's in a contingency mode. We heard a little bit about that in last Board of Commissioner meeting where that didn't go so well. And it also helps optimize where the investments are.
Mhm.
So I would appreciate a little bit of runway to make sure that we're investing in the nearest term priority needs.
Right.
We need to build some capacity to do that.
And we've had discussions amongst the commissioners about you coming on, and we've talked about it's going to be a running start. I think we're seeing the running start in progress. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, we want to give the GM some runway here. There's no doubt about that. So, don't worry, we're not trying to press you. My question, I'm going to tie you in with that, what's just been talked about with Mike's earlier comment about the final stages of the RUS borrowing and how, if we change this electric capital improvement plan, how's that going to impact our ask for the funding from RUS? Is there a tie together there? Would we have to restart the process? Could we alter it? Just trying to make sure that the funding stays in line with any changes that we're going to make on the electric capital plan.
Well, let me add an addendum. For example, if we say the application was for 10 million, but we decide we only need 7, or what's our flexibility that you're aware of?
We can
in-
draw down whatever. We can say we want need $10 million, but only draw down $7 million.
And then we only
Then we
have to
only
pay them
the
back
7. Yeah.
what we've actually. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
we
a
only-
construction loan.
Yeah.
You
We only
what you
pay
borrow.
back what we draw down
Okay.
from them. And we have to support whatever we draw down with work orders, and what the
Right.
form, 219 is the form that we have to submit to RUS that shows that we completed the work and everything that has been done. So, and we can move the dollars around to a certain extent, even though we have a 4-year work plan, we're basing our construction loan off of that 4-year work plan. We can move those dollars around to other projects. So if there is something that comes up, or we decide we want to do more pole replacements instead of moving forward with the substation work right now, we could do that. as
So a
well.
little finer point on that. If we were to go from 6 million in substation upgrades to 2 million, would that create any issues?
No, so we would just have to work with RUS to let them know that hey, we decided not to do this project, or we're pushing this project out a year, 2 years, and we're going to use some of those funds for that. We just have to get their approval to move those funds around.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with everything Mike's saying, but I just want to clarify that RUS is not the only source of capital that we have. So if they continue to be the low cost provider for capital, we'll certainly try to work with them. If there becomes impediments in what we need to do and what they're willing to fund, then we'll look for other funding sources.
Did that answer your question, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. Flexibility. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Please continue.
So looking at our water capital, we got some pipe replacements and upsizing of pipes for 3.1 million. Some water tank maintenance and upgrades that we need to do for 252,000. Our wastewater, this is our septic system, what stuff that we do that we own and operate, for just under 15,000, and then some miscellaneous upgrades for 400,000.
And this is all in 2026.
Yes.
That seems like a lot, especially $3 million of pipeline and upsizing of pipes.
But we
All
have,
alone.
we have some loans that through the state,
Okay.
the Public Works Board through the state to do some of those replacements and stuff. We're just
Okay.
there again, we're looking at some of these, getting a handle on a lot of the
Sure.
projects and everything.
And did this include that water tank in Cala Point that we were talking about, or is that something?
No, that's
Different.
separate. This is the 2.6 million for the
Tile,
the
coil.
oil mains water replacement. We're replacing all the water mains.
Right.
That's a grant loan combo. And then we just applied for a feasibility study on a new Cala Point tank.
Okay.
And then 7 million for pipeline upgrades in the tri area.
Okay.
So again, on flexibility on that coil loan, how much time do we have to execute that? Is there some hard line? Could that go in the 27 budget, or does that have to be in the 26 budget? I mean,
that can be pushed back. I think it's 28 or 29 that's gonna be spent by, but I'm getting notifications from the state that, they're getting more pressure to make sure that that money goes out that they're issuing. So we pushed it back almost a year already. We don't want to push it back too much farther.
Curious if Jose has something.
We should be live on that here within the next couple months.
As in going to bid or engineering or?
You should, it'll be in one of the meetings coming up probably in a month and a half.
But I guess I have Dan's question too. So are we at, the design is done and we're going out to bid for construction?
Finalizing, the paperwork, go out to bid.
Okay, so the design is done. And we just have to go out to bid and have the work done. Okay, cool.
And again, just want to express appreciation for staff. So I have already done my due diligence on this one, met with the water team. There's an amazing amount of breaks on that part of the line.
Oh man, we've been hearing about the coil for a long time.
So I won't be standing in the way.
We should call
Before it was an
perforate-
electric utility.
the perforated water system as
Yes.
opposed to the oil water
And
system.
appreciate
Yeah.
Will and Jose collaborating on funding opportunities to take care of that very strong system need.
That actually looked like the coil pump house, wasn't it? Was that the coil pump house on that picture?
Quilcene.
Quilcene, okay. Oh, the new one. That's the new one, yeah.
So the expense for the Eagle Ridge, going back to that slide, the Eagle Ridge upgrades, where is that subsumed?
I don't know. The Eagle Ridge booster pump, is that gonna be done this?
Yeah, it should be, we're working on that. We have parts ordered, buttoning up a couple things that should be done this year as well.
So that's really 2025
Yeah, so
budget.
that one's a 2025,
Okay, thank you.
26 project. Unless for some reason something gets delayed.
Okay. Please continue.
All right, so the broadband, we've kind of used these same ones. It's all the grant work that we're doing. For the $15 million. As we move through, we're getting ready to start 2 new grant areas
Correct.
here pretty soon, and then getting a couple more ready to go, so.
Okay.
Here's looking at the fleet capital for 805,000. Electric, we have 190,000 for vehicles. Water, 115,000. The broadband, $500,000. There is a little bit of a caveat to the broadband ones. As part of our reconnect grant loan, we did include vehicles. So if we do move forward with the broadband fleet purchases, we would look at reimbursing ourselves through the reconnect grants for those.
Okay. I had a question in the packet that we got, there was like 1, 2, 3, 4 electric capital pickup trucks, and there's 2 for the water fleet, and there's some other stuff in there. And so when it just describes pickups, I'm just wondering if we're looking at electric vehicles or gas vehicles, and if we've had our electric vehicle long enough to start calculating cost of operation from purchase and everything else, or if right now those decisions haven't been made and they're just like, we know we need some trucks, so we've got some budgets in here for trucks.
So we're budgeting for some replacements because we have a lot of our fleet that is getting in between a 7 to 10 year age
Mhm.
range and well over 100,000 miles.
Yep.
As far as what we're looking at or what we're purchasing, we haven't really made that determination.
Okay.
Most of them we looked at were gas vehicles, not saying that we couldn't go to electric or hybrids based on what's available through the state contracts, or even getting bids from at least three different dealerships
Mhm.
on what we needed. Jose actually does drive our Ford Lightning on a regular basis, so we're getting close. We've had it. He's been driving it for almost a year now, full time. Almost 2 now. Okay, so we are getting close to that point where we can look at it.
Yeah, and I realized too that a lot of our, these ones that, as you say, are over 100,000 miles. I don't know how old those rigs are, if they're 10 years old or 8 years old or higher than
10,
that.
12 years old.
So if it may be kind of early to know what the cost of operation is an electric vehicle, but it seems like, I know Chevy just came out with their electric truck. I know there's more options. And I hope it's just something that we look at, so we're making a smart purchase for the lifetime of the vehicle, whatever it is.
It's a great question. Do the commissioners have some advice from us about whether we should just be doing a straight business case on that? Or is there some other factors besides just fuel and operating costs that we should be factoring into that consideration?
I mean, that would be the beginning, part of it, the fuel operation cost to purchase. I know that like the county commissioners have told Jefferson Transit, thou shalt only buy electric buses from this point. We haven't gone there yet, but from my perspective, it's just, making a smart purchase, and these things have good incentives. The costs have come down, and I think we should just, make the smartest decision we can for the utility.
Yeah, I look at it from a dollars and cents at the end of the day, unless there's a real fine margin between them, what's the best economically for the utility, because it's another rate impact. So, that's the angle I look at it from, is the dollars and the cents. I'm a hybrid person, so I'm nothing against electric, but hybrid to me seems to, at the end of the day, be a better option in a lot of applications, so.
Commissioner Collins, do you have any feedback on that?
I'd like to see the cost argument and to understand what's the best choice for the PUD. Although I have a bit of a bias towards electric.
Okay, thank you for your feedback on that.
And the only issue with hybrids is I don't think they've got really hybrid trucks, hybrid cars. If when we're buying cars, I totally agree. Hybrid cars are awesome. And so anyway, just I think where the commissioners are now is we would just like to see those costs and what we can project on owning an electric truck.
And we're still somewhat at the mercy of the state, right? Don't we utilize the state to purchase our fleet
State
vehicle
contract.
through? Yeah.
The state contracts have both. The direct pay incentives seem to be going away though for electric, so the economics are changing a little bit about that that space. So.
One other question on fleet, and I can't pin it down, but I came across contradictory numbers when it came to fleet. It seemed like I came up with a number of 220,000 at one point, and then I see 800,500 at another when I do the math. And so I was having some issues with how much really is the fleet cost budgeted for.
$805,000.
Okay.
So originally we didn't have the broadband in. So we took that out. We took away a vehicle, added it back in. There's been quite a few variations of this going through over time.
No,
as we keep moving through, there will still be variations of it as we go through.
no, thanks for the clarification.
And I'll own some of that. I was working kind of late on this budget package.
We were
Okay.
working up until almost right before the meeting today.
Please continue.
So some of our other capital items of $1.2 million, we got some facility improvements. $111,000, just some improvements to our parking lots and the warehouse, the yard here, and getting to our pole yard just down the road, trying to improve safety for our employees. Looking at possibly doing a new material storage building, because right now we store a lot of things outside.
Mm-hmm.
That is not good for the equipment that we're storing outside. So we need to do some. We need to do some IT server replacements for $300,000.
And is that for our networks, or does that have anything to do with broadband, or is it a mix?
That's mainly our our corporate network.
Okay, thanks.
The tools, we are needing more. There again, we need to replace some of our more expensive tools. So we got $155,000 in tools. And then contracted engineering. These are not necessarily job specific things, but just things that we need to do. And we also, one of the things Joe kind of brought on as he came on, was to do a distribution model of our electric system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to do that. That helps us as we figure out where we need load, how, if we change load, do something, it will help us know how it would affect the system.
This is the more sophisticated analytics to better understand our system, better understand where the weak points are, better understand where we need to be spending money.
And to meet our reliability criteria, as some of our constituents have been advocating.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
So you can just look at the change in project, in our capital projects. Net between 2025 budget and the 2026 budget was 147,515, because the electric work plan went down over 1.4 million. Everything else kind of came up. So we increased our capital budget by $147,000 between 25 and 26. I'm going to pause here for just a second. I see some intent looking.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the slide I have in here to see if there was anything. I had highlighted the water work plan, 3.6 million from last year, 3.8 million this year. And I think you went through that. A lot of that was the coil and so forth. And the contracted engineering costs, I saw they went up by 300,000, and that's related to things like what you're talking about, Joe, getting that distribution system, a better understanding of its workings and so forth. Okay, I think you've answered my questions there.
So this is kind of going back. This is just kind of showing this was, I think, a couple of years ago. The commissioners had kind of asked about our long-term debt. So as we get ready to talk, as we start talking about the budget, I'd like to bring this forth. So this is looking at our electric and broadband long-term debt. We have $86 million in outstanding principal right now between those two departments. We have a couple different loans that we borrowed from for the broadband side. And then we have the $79 million is from the original purchase of the system. And then the 5.3 million is the last one that we did for the Auto Street and the AMI deployment project. And then we have the Port Townsend Business Fiber and Olympic Fiber Corridor additional funding.
Well, it's interesting that we owe less now with all those combined loans than we did when we first bought the system. That was like 115 million. So
Yeah.
we're, even though we borrowed some more money on the whole, we're in a better spot. I had a question. Are you going to get to unrestricted cash at some point? Is that coming up?
No, I did not include it on the slot in the PowerPoint.
Okay, can I take you back? And this was on page, get back to it in my, sorry, now I'm trying to find it again. Here we go. So in the packet, it's like page 29 or 30 or something like that. Looks like it might be page 30. When you have unrestricted cash estimated at the end of this year to be about 9.4 million. And then you anticipate that at the end of 2026, unrestricted cash will be 17 million, which sounds really awesome. And I'm kind of wondering, is a bunch of that anticipated to be things like grants that we're going to have to turn around and spend, or the loan money, that $10 million RUS loan, if we actually borrowed it? Or
yeah, so that is going back to the cash flow, and after we do all the operating expenses, take our operating margins and add everything back in the depreciation and which is non-cash, and add that back in, adding the $7.8 million back into the bank. That says the 2025 ending unrestricted cash is if we spent nothing else. That's what we had in the bank at the end of June of this year.
right.
So if I spend nothing else through the end of the year, we add the 7.8 million in the cash inflow, or then we would have the 17 million. It should say inflow, not outflow.
Okay, so it's not a real number yet.
It's not a real number.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what's going to happen in 26. It's just kind of here's where we could end up at.
Okay, and I guess my question again, does that include that 10 million if we were to borrow it from
Yes,
RUS?
$10
Okay,
million.
that helps me get to that number.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had the similar question, but I'll pin you down a little more on the number for 2020 at the end of 2025. How confident as to what you think that number will really be? I know that's a crystal ball question. We still have 4 months to go, but do you think we'll be at 9 million at the end of the year? Is that a fair estimate?
We've been averaging, I would say we're going to be pretty close to around that 9-10 million, because that's about what we've been averaging on a monthly basis. Based on, it also just depends on how the grant funds come in, how that's reimbursing ourselves for the money we put out for broadband, BPA for the next, if we hit a cold snap.
But I look
count
at
the
that number,
quarters.
yeah, I look at that number as a netted out number. I know that there's going to be lag,
Yeah.
there's going to be carryover. We have to spend it, then we get reimbursed. So I was just kind of curious as what you think that net number would be if 9 million is in the ballpark, or if there's a
That's
lot
nine-
that
yes,
you're uncomfortable
I'm
about.
gonna say 9 million is in the ballpark because that's about what we've been averaging in unrestricted cash on a monthly basis.
Okay.
So now looking at the water long-term debt, we've come down a long ways on that. Just less used to be the entire page longer. We're only at 5.5 million now. For those water loans, we've paid over the last couple of years, we've paid quite a few off of them. We have two big ones, of course, which is the USDA Rural Development Loan of $2 million. That was when we did the part of the tri-area, the Quimper system, and the switch with the city of Port Townsend. And then we have the almost $2 million for the Quilcene water tank. So those will both be around for quite a while, but we're getting a lot of the smaller ones paid off.
Little off topic, but a question here on the Peterson Lake, when that pays out in 26, what kind of closing up on that? Is there titles and deeds? And I mean, what exactly has to transpire at the end of that?
So the property's already in our name. All the deeds and everything are in our name. We just been paying the Peterson family heirs over that loan since 2000, or I think it was
2006 maybe? I want to
Yeah.
say
like
2006.
2000s. I don't
So if they have a
remember.
lien, it'll go away.
Yeah, it will go.
Yeah.
It will go away, and everything will be free and clear at that property at that time.
So I guess the second part of that, again, is the financial person. Are we expecting, obviously, we won't have that payment any longer, but will there be new expenses that we will don't have now? I'm just kind of curious of where we're going to wind up as that thing winds out, what we're going to wind up as far as revenue or expense on that particular piece.
So we have.
I think that that's going to depend on what we decide to do with it and whether we decide to improve on the primary structure that's out there. And I would suggest, Joe, in your leisure time, it's worth a trip out there to see that land and see the building.
Besides Mike being an awesome CFO, he's also a great tour guide. So he's already taken me out there.
Ah,
Beautiful property.
Yeah, since we're 8 months out, I'm just kind of setting the table that that's something we don't want to forget about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we already have some maintenance costs that we have to do out there. As far as, and Ken is right, it depends on what the direction the board kind of has us take. Joe hasn't seen the report that that was provided to the commissioners 2 or 3 months. I don't remember when we did it, but within the last 6 months, we kind of had a report that was presented to the board, some of the costs and stuff. So there will be some cost depending on what we do with it. If we choose to keep it, there will always be that cost, but we will have some revenue coming off of it if we do the timber harvest and stuff like we've done in the past.
So the other part that you mentioned, onboarding of the new GM, when will he expect to get to see that report?
I need to email it to him. I have
Okay.
not. I keep forgetting. I've been working on the budget too much to be able to get that to him.
There are things that are keeping me up at night much more than this one. So this is a good foot further out there.
You just haven't seen the whole iceberg yet. You've only seen the tip.
So yeah, so that there is going to be a cost with that, Dan. Even after we're done paying the loan off, there will still be cost associated with it. So now we're going to get into a little bit kind of showing our safety related expenses and some of the things we're doing with that as we continue over last year we started a little bit. We're going to really push it again in 26 for that. Some of the stuff that we're doing with our safety budget. We have the workplace safety, public safety, and also environmental safety. So through capital projects, employee training, this equipment upgrades to that, just the staffing hours, capital projects or outreach, security, physical, both, and that's both from an infrastructure, IT, cybersecurity, and physical security that we'll be upgrading. Then for the environmental, looking at wildfire mitigation, some equipment replacements and capital projects to just make everything better. So looking at where and how we're spending that, it's the prevention of injuries and damages. We want everybody to go home safely at night to their families. So we're going to be spending quite a bit of time in safety meetings, safety trainings, things like that. It's where a lot of that $1 million is going to go to, is just doing that. Jeff Dodd, our safety manager, 23% of that $1 million as he continues to build the safety program here at Jefferson PUD. And then we have some safety equipment, testing and repair of equipment, and then just the clothing that protects our employees is where that rounds up for our safety costs.
If I could add, I realize from a financial standpoint, these look like costs. They're could be regarded as investments. Not doing this well will cost the PUD much more in medical costs, potentially claims, and or employee morale. So cost, technically, investment perhaps is the mindset.
Yeah, one bad incident could eat up several years of that budget. So, and
So just looking at the 2026 budget timeline, we're meeting today because by Monday, September 1st, we have to have a draft budget posted to our website. We can do some updates as needed in September. Our budget hearing will be Monday, October the 6th at 5. I believe we're going to do it at 5 p.m. So we'll start a regular meeting and then go into the budget hearing for that. And then we'll do additional meetings as needed in October, November, as we finalize everything. And then the budget needs to be approved by November 30th to be able to give it to the county so they can do the taxes and everything.
okay.
So maybe now it might be a good time for a little bit of calendaring on what we think we're going to need in September, because I know my September dance card is for 3, not for 1. And I know the general manager is probably going to somewhat reflect that too. So I think, how many meetings, excuse me, do we think we'll need? And when do we want to try and schedule them? I know staff's got work to do. I'm not trying to push into anything, but I think we really need to be cognizant. September is going to be a crazy month. Not that they all aren't, but I think September is going to be extraordinarily crazy.
So Dan, did you want to talk about the meetings in September right now, or what are your thoughts?
I try and figure out some dates or a timeline for September, because October 6th is going to be here before we know it.
So are we,
So I don't know what they have to meet
Yeah.
for, criteria for getting things in line. We obviously have to post it by September 1st, which is a
Well,
couple
so the
days.
budget that is kind of went over today is what we're going to use, unless the commissioners have a dire thing that they want changed, don't like the number that I need to work on in the next couple of days to do. The meetings in September is if we're going to make significant changes before we do the budget hearing.
okay.
So I don't know if they're needed in September. I don't know if we're going to need to do significant changes before.
I guess that's kind of what I'm
Well,
asking staff.
let me, is this the last slide?
Yeah, this is
So let me pause this here, because it sounds like we're going to get into discussion and deliberation. So did we have any public comment or questions on the presentation before we go into board discussion and deliberation? Bill?
Yeah, thanks. I have one question off, but I have several comments.
And try to keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Minutes, I know. So, 3 years, we'll be 3 years into our new development that I live in. At the time that the Dana Roberts second transformer gets in, and I think that'll firm up the power for the development. 3 years ago, the general manager said it caught us by surprise. And we've been playing catch-ups for 3 years. I want to bring up the point that Madrona Ridge comes on their grand opening is on September 13th. Phase 1 is 167 homes, much larger than the development I live in at 58. I know the stuff's in the ground for it, but how about all the things that have to back it up for the demand? And then I just read in the leader that the city council has approved a 321 home neighborhood on Rainier Street roundabout, the schedule is construction starting in 2028. So there's got to be some kind of big demand that's going to come on board not far after Madrona Ridge, so 321 homes. So just things, I don't know if that we had enough distribution and substation and all the things in place to make those happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the last comment was Ford just announced they want to get into the $30,000 smaller EV truck business by 2027 instead of selling the more expensive Lightnings, or along with selling the more expensive Lightnings. Might be interesting to see how that goes for you guys. And finally, the question, the BEAD funding get assumed in or out on the broadband?
Okay, whatever comments, questions you want to respond to there.
I agree with the concerns about having development on the system without having a strong understanding of what its impact is. That's precisely why we're investing in modeling tools. So our engineering manager, Jimmy, is going to be leading that effort, and we're going to get a better handle on being able to plan the impacts of growth on our system and be able to reinforce it, not in a reactive mode, but in a proactive mode.
And just out of curiosity, is that kind of software, those kind of tools able to say, hey, we're going to add 160 homes in this location. What's the effect going to be? Will it be able to do that kind of stuff?
That is an end result. They obviously require in it, you have to put good data in. So we need to make sure that our system is modeled appropriately and that we will be able to leverage the AMI information to understand where those loads are at on the network better than we might have been able to do historically. So we'll leverage those two tools to understand current state and then be able to model these additional loads on our system. And furthermore, model the way that the system operates in a contingency mode to make sure that it'll work before we actually do it to the system. That's what the goal of these tools. And again, it's not something that's particularly innovative. It's just not something that we have that that we don't have that capability yet, but our peer utilities enjoy that opportunity.
Okay. Did we have any other public comment?
One more question he had on BEAD too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we were provisionally awarded $6.4 million for our BEAD grant application. We were one of the few PUDs in the state to receive awards. At this time, the awards package is in the public comment period, and then it will go off to the NTIA, the federal agency that's handling the funding. I was not very optimistic the money would be coming through, but the majority of the project areas in Washington state, like many other states, went to low Earth orbit satellite, went to Starlink and Kuiper. So those of us that did receive fiber grants, I'm more optimistic that we will receive them.
And there's some more steps. I think in your email, you were talking about how it goes to NTIA or whatever.
Yeah, and they have 90 days to review after they receive it. So we won't be finding out for a couple of months. And it's been a political football. So we'll find out next year. As it relates to Phil's neighborhood, he's part of his neighborhood is covered by Jefferson North. Part of it is an adjacent area. Those adjacent areas are available for BEAD funding. So we have a number of folks who paid or intend to pay a $750 adjacent area fee that we will have to either reimburse or that we will not charge them in the future. But we are not going to take that step until we have a contract be awarded.
Okay.
So budget impact is the answer for 26. There may not be a BEAD impact in 26.
None. We would, if anything, we would start a little bit of engineering and planning, but there would be no construction in 2026.
More of a 2027
Correct.
thing. Okay. All right. Did we have anybody else, any members of the public who wanted to comment or ask a question? Going once, going twice, not seeing any hands. All right, let's move on. So I guess staff is asking us a question in terms of, does this budget generally look okay? Or do we have direction to give to staff so that they can make adjustments to the budget so that we can presumably approve it in October, November. What are our thoughts?
Well, I'm assuming that we'll have one more update after today's conversations, because I know some notes were taken on following up on like the BPA information, and maybe I didn't keep track of all the things that came up, but I would say more about staff for timing. I assume we'll have at least one more meeting in September to follow up on what any changes they may have or may make. I don't know if anything we talked about is going to be a game changer in the sense that it would be a no-go. I don't have that enough knowledge yet to make that determination.
Well, and as I've learned, a budget is a guide. And as you proceed through a year, you make further adjustments, you make decisions on spending. If you need to make decisions on borrowing, you come to the board and you ask us. Let me ask you, Joe, again, you're only in week 4, and then Mike, what is the actual date that we have the hearing on our first meeting in October? And then my recollection is we can adopt it at any point after that, but we have to adopt it before some date in November, right? Or
Yeah,
December.
so we have the budget hearing October 6th this year, which is the first Monday. It's one of our odd meeting months.
I think one of the years we actually adopted the budget at that hearing. We're like, do we have anything else? We didn't have anything else. We just adopted it and we were done.
So there was that's what having these, trying to get to the board as early as possible on it. So there is less questions on it. So yeah, you can adopt it as early as the first Monday, the budget hearing, but at the final day, it has to be approved by November 30th.
November 30th, before the end of November. Okay, that's our
end of November.
That's our drop dead date. And again, the longer we have this thing floating, it's work that staff has to do to maintain it until we kind of put it to bed and say we're done with that for now. I guess I have a question for Joe. Dan is bringing up the possibility of, more focus on the budget in September if needed, or, and I think some of the questions asked today, you could certainly probably give us information on, say, the BPA question. How are our BPA rates structured? How much is that could come up in a manager's report in one of our meetings in September, which I think, would be good. As you look at this budget, just knowing how much, do you anticipate making significant changes before that October hearing or before we adopt it, or what are your thoughts?
I don't expect to make significant changes to it. There's going to be a number of additional regulatory approvals. So let's bring up Bonneville. Well, we're going to have to bring before the commission a contract from Bonneville. So I anticipate answering this question beforehand, but there'll be other opportunities to answer these types of questions before commissioners approve that contract. There'll be any expenditures to implement this budget that exceed my authority of about $250,000 are going to come back before the commission. So there's, I think you were spot on when you said this is essentially a plan that is going to have additional regulatory checks and balances along the course of the year as we're implementing it. I don't think I'm going to have enough I mean, again, we have a reasonable 4-year plan. I'm looking for optimization opportunities, not major transformational opportunities at this point.
Right.
So it's going to take some time for me to suggest those tweaks, but I'll keep you informed, and you'll probably have to approve some things before.
Yeah, and as I think about this, it's like it really won't be, quote unquote, your budget until this time next year, really. And I would say I don't have any major changes to make to this budget at this point. We're going to be, adopting it sometime after October. We're going to have this BPA stuff we've got to sign. And it's really, like I said, it's a guide. And I think the more you can keep us updated on significant project costs, significant timing things. We've got the substation at Dana Roberts that we're hoping to get that work done. I mean, if we don't need to do additional work on the budget, it would, if we're generally okay with it as a plan, I'd say it's probably better to get it done and put to bed, because we got a lot of other things that affect the operation and we want to make sure we're on top of. So
yeah,
those are my thoughts.
I'm just trying to make sure we don't overlook anything. I know that staff does their due diligence. They run numbers, low income, right? What are we looking at from this commerce in the state on low income, what's going to sunset at the federal level, maybe that's there. CETA, what's CETA going to do to us? Are we calculating that into the equation by department? I'm still somewhat concerned about how we're calculating revenues on the broadband and the electric. Water's pretty cut and dried. And then the fact that we're going to have to somewhat have an idea what the rate impact's going to be with the water next year in that survey. So there's some real big moving parts to this for me on the level of information that we got without going more granular. Now, I'm not saying I want more granularity at this point. I'm just hoping that everybody hasn't missed anything, that we've dotted the i's, crossed the t's, and something doesn't come up last minute. Someone comes on, I can think of a couple people that follow us pretty close, say, hey, what did you guys do about that? And it's like, oh my goodness, how did we overlook that?
And I think the water one we talked about at the very beginning would be something that would be good to get some feedback on. Is there any, what could we do to try and close the gap on that water negative 700K number? What's our ability to do that? And does staff have any recommendations before we adopt the budget, so that we could look at, okay, we're adopting the budget, then that means we're going to do something with the rates that winter.
Yeah. My gut feeling is that revenues versus expenses, that maybe the margin's going to be then tighter than what's being projected, and that our overall budget may be more than what it is, and that creates problems.
Well, what if we did this, at least put, I don't know what the meetings look like in September in terms of work items, but what if we had the budget as an unfinished business item, and it's a lot to have in the packet, but it's electronic. We don't have to print it out. What if we had this presentation in that packet, and if we want to talk about it or come back and revisit it, it's there. And if we don't have anything to add, we just move on. Any thoughts, commissioners, on that?
Yeah, I'll leave it to staff at this point, whether they think they've informed us well enough or not. I mean,
Ken, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice to have the presentation available. And moving forward, available before we do this kind of meeting. But I think that staff did a very good job in preparing tonight's presentation. I think it's clear, and there, as it has been said, there are a lot of moving parts here, and certainly it'll be interesting to see the integration of the FCS numbers and what we're proposing to spend, and to understand, does that close the gap, particularly for water, and where does that leave us for electric? And I don't imagine that there would be any significant change with broadband, depending on whether the grant comes through, actually, which has undergone many changes over the past few months. So a lot more to be revealed.
So let me propose this. We're going to have a draft budget that goes out September 1st, right? How about if we have that draft budget be in the packet for the meeting on September 2nd? So it'd be part of the agenda packet. And if staff does like a cover memo that just says, hey, on what's today, August, whatever today is, the 25th or 26th. On August 26th, the commissioners were presented, an overview of this budget. And then, have a summary. Okay, we have to have this thing adopted by blah, 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 blah. If there's any comments or discussion, we can have, further discussion on the budget or direction in this meeting, and we can just bring it up. If we have members of the public, they can see the draft budget. And if we could take this presentation and add it to the agenda materials that's available on the website for today, and if you could email it to the commissioners, I think that would give everybody the best information. And we may have nothing to say. We may get no questions, and we may just move on. But if you could at least, in your heads as you think about timing of that meeting, say, have a half hour, that if we need a half hour to talk about budget, we can. And if we don't need it, we just move on, and that we just have it as a placeholder. And then by the time we get to the hearing, people will have had a chance to absorb the information as well as us. And if we have more questions or direction, we can give it. Does that sound okay to the board?
My suggestion would be that we do that on the 16th rather than on the 2nd, which is right around the corner.
Okay. It's true. That's next week. So I'm fine with that. Is that okay with you, Dan?
Yeah, again, like I said, the further we run it in September, the tighter the ability to schedule something could get.
And it doesn't mean that, so please get this presentation to us and on the website. And if we have questions for next Tuesday, we can certainly ask those questions of staff related to the budget. If we feel like we need a special meeting before the 16th, we can ask for that. But at this point, I think, Ken, I think that's a good proposal. Let's put it on the agenda for the 16th and get the information out there.
Yeah, again, the one other part of this that still has me concerned, and not just because of the budget, is the fact that, and the general manager mentioned it earlier, we have other options in RUS, but the funding, if the funding doesn't play out the way we hope or need it to be, that this could get interesting.
Okay. Do we have Joe?
Yeah, I'm going to try to maybe summarize. So
Yeah.
this is a very large document, so I don't want to blow up your emails. Perhaps we post it on the website and send you a link to it
Okay.
pronto. So, within the next 24 hours.
Got it.
And we can leave it as unfinished business and maybe incrementally answer some of these questions on the 2nd.
Yep.
And the 16th, unless I'm out of alignment with Commissioner Collins' recommendation. Is that?
Yeah, I think you heard us correctly. Cool. Anything else, commissioners? Hearing none, our business is done. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Joe. I realize you guys are like the guys on the track field trying to pass on the baton, and you might not even be playing the same game. One of you might have a football and one of the other might have a basketball. So who the heck knows what's going on here?
Yeah,
But
thanks, everybody.
we're building a budget, and I think, Joe, you're showing a fair amount of grace for this isn't your budget, and you're getting to know it. And I think staff is showing a fair amount of grace and realizing you have a new leader with new skills and new way of looking at things. And it seems like you guys are all working together. And both commissioners were there on Sunday, but man, that was a great event that we had on Sunday where staff got a chance to hang out. Commissioners had a chance to hang out. And I thought it was just a lovely way to celebrate, being part of the PUD. And it was so nice to see all the staff who came and the family members, and it was a lot of fun. So good morale builder and a nice event. Okay, so it is 5:17 and we stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.